Many thanks for choosing us. If government fails to subsidize electricity tariffs, consumers could be forced to pay more than double what they currently pay from August 2022. This is because the Electricity Company of Ghana is demanding a 148% increase in tariffs, a proposal from the power distributor submitted to Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PURC, is asking the regulator to approve the increment to cover the period of 2019 and 2022. My colleague, Blessed Soga, joins me in the studio with details. Soga, how are you?
I'm doing well.
So good to see you too. But what's the justification by PURC asking ECG to charge this amount?
Well, so as we know, for now, this is a proposal coming through from not just the Electricity Company of Ghana, but other utility service providers as well. ECG is asking in all for some 148% in terms of an upward review of their tariffs. They are attributing this largely to the need to recover the cost of production. ECG claims that almost all the factors of production, the cost has shot up and there's a need to meet the targets. But also the Ghana Water Company as well is making a proposal as well, not just the ECG, but also the Ghana Water Company Limited. Now, they are saying that they would now want to turn things around and to provide a world-class service. And because of that, they would want the PURC to support it in that agenda of transforming their services and then making sure that water service delivery is at its best. So we have the demands also from the Ghana Water Company Limited. There you have it. And then they go on to talk about reasons affecting or influencing this proposal. So the first one they talk about is the revaluation of assets. They talk about the fact that since 2018, they've had to transform their services since 2018, and ever since they've done that exercise, their assets shot up from 2.2 billion to 17.2 billion. And given that fact, there's a need obviously for return on investment. If you put your money in, you need to gain back. And so there would be a need for PURC to do some changes. They are also making another point, which has got to do with some more demands, particularly regarding to the depreciation of the cedi. As you do know, Ghana is currently having a challenge with the various foreign trading currencies, such as the US dollar. They point to the fact that as at the end of 2021, for instance, the US dollar was trading almost 6 cedis to the Ghanaian cedi, and that is making their cost of production a difficulty for them. So since the last tariff adjustment, which happened in 2019, they believe that there's no significant increment in the charge for consumers. So that would have to happen so that they can make up for the cost of in terms of the depreciation of the cedi. Then there's also the issue about the debt. ECG, Ghana Water Company, on the average, monthly raises about 100 million Ghana cedis. However, 47% of that amount goes into servicing debt, which they are currently dealing with, some 73.9 million US dollars, which is also a challenge for 7.9 million US dollars, which is currently a challenge for the Ghana Water Company Limited. So they believe that since 47% of what they gather every month is going into servicing loans, there'll be a need to increase the charges or the charge rate. Once it goes up, then they'll be able to easily pay off their debt and then continue to provide more services. And then there's also the challenge about compensation. You know that Ghana Water Company Limited,
compensation.
Obviously, Ghana Water Company Limited is carrying out projects across the country. Some of these projects go into private property, and there's a need to pull down structures and all of that. So because of that, it shot up the cost. And since 2019, no significant changes have happened in terms of an upward adjustment of the tariff. So these are some of the factors for which the Ghana Water Company Limited is asking for more, and then the ECG as well is making similar demands, asking the PRC.
So we understand ECG is also looking at street lights tariffs.
Right.
Tell us more about that.
Well, so you know that we don't necessarily pay that much for it. ECG believes that it's becoming a drain on their cost of operation, and there would be a need for some upward adjustments. Already, this is a company that is dealing with making up for the cost of production, as I pointed out. That has been their basic demand, and they believe that once some of these critical elements are catered for in terms of consumers paying more for those services, they'll be able to function properly and to deliver their services.
Blessed Soga is my colleague, and he's been explaining to us what exactly the demands are from the ECG, asking the PURC to charge 148%. But how does the utility service producers, distributors and regulators arrive at the computations for proposed adjustments? How justified are the figures they present, and what informs the details? Let's get on the line and speak with Chief Policy Analyst at the Ghana Institute of Public Policy Options, Dr. Charles Rekubrobe. Good morning, sir. I'm grateful for your time, Dr. Rekubrobe. Dr. Rekubrobe, good morning. If you can hear me, you are on News Desk on Joy News. All right, so we lost Dr. Rekubrobe there. When I get him back on the line, he'll be telling us what he makes of the 148% proposal by the ECG, asking the PRC to charge those tariffs. And we've been talking about the upwards adjustments. The Ghana Water Company is also asking for tariff adjustments. They've given a number of reasons. One of them is land compensation. The fact that they've had to work on their lines in various communities and they've had to compensate people. That alone is having a toll on their activities. ECG is asking for street light tariffs. Dr. Rekubrobe is back on the line. Doc, I'm grateful for your time.
Oh, okay. Good morning. How are you, Aisha?
Hello, Dr. Rekubrobe. First of all, I just want to gauge your mood on the 148% proposal by the ECG.
ECG is deserving of a tariff increase. I cannot say it's 148 or whatever it is, but it's usually a tactic. Ask for more and get something close to what you need. But there's no doubt that tariff increases are necessary because of the fact that the pricing of tariffs is supposed to follow the same automatic formula as we do with petrol. You know, the 15-day reviews. I think tariff was 3 months. But unfortunately, apart from the major tariff review of 2019, we haven't actually been doing the automatic adjustment. So the little drops that would have come every 2 or 3 months has now become a very mighty drop or increase in 3 years.
So how do you usually come by these figures? I mean, would you be kind enough to explain to us how these figures are arrived at?
Well, basically, the principle is this. We must recover fully the cost of producing the power. And that means that we must recover BR's cost, the IPP's cost, the transmission company's cost, and then finally ECG's cost. So the production, the transmission, and distribution of power, all those costs must be covered. Plus, of course, profit for the utility. Plus, of course, money for them to be able to reinvest in their assets. So that's basically the principle. But you also make sure that you do not pay for their inefficiency. So there's usually a factor that allows you to check their inefficiency. But I think the major problem is that instead of, it doesn't really make sense when fossil fuel prices have been going up a lot, and then we are able to increase fuel prices at the pumps. And then we think that natural gas, which is the major input into power generation, we think it doesn't go up. And so we adjust power tariffs to reflect that, plus all the other increases of exchange rates, etc., that goes into these.
Dr. Rekubrobe, so what is usually the role of the power producers, regulators, distributors like VRA, Gridco, and PRC in this instance?
VRA used to be the major power producing company, but now we have VRA, and we also have the Power, and we also have the independent power producers. So they produce the power, and then Gridco transmits. All those wires you see going all over the country. And then you have the ECG and NET. They distribute the power to us. They bring it to our home. And looking after all of that is PURC, which is to make sure that we get quality power and we pay for the power that we get. And also to make sure that the utilities do not go under and sink so that they won't be there to produce the power for us.
So what then becomes of the consumer? Are there options for the consumers? What are they left with?
The consumer, well, I think if you want to have power in your house, you must be prepared to pay for it. I always used to get into trouble for saying that if you think power is expensive, try putting candles or kerosene to light up your home. You find that it's far more expensive, it's far more unreliable, it's dirtier, etc., etc. So the thing to do is that if you want power, pay for it. But what the consumer can do is that they can use the power more efficiently. And there are several ways in which you don't leave lights on, you don't boil kettles to make a cup of tea. There are many, many ways that the consumer can use lights efficiently. But what the consumer needs is reliable power, no doomsaw, no low current, as the Ghanaians call it, but good quality power that they are then always prepared to pay for.
I'm grateful for your time this morning. Charles Brobe is Chief Policy Analyst at the Ghana Institute for Public Policy Options, and he's been explaining why consumers must try and conserve energy. We've been sampling the views of some consumers here in Accra, and this is what they make of the proposed adjustment.
If they're asking us to pay more, are they also willing to give us supply every day? I mean, that's my question. If they are asking us to pay more, then they should also be willing to supply us with water and constant electricity every day. Because now, Trotro is always increasing. E-levy too has come on top, and things are getting harder. I know it's globally, but then looking at internally, the government should have also done something to help Ghanaians with. And we are not getting anything out of it. So if they say they are increasing electricity, I shouldn't see doomsaw in my home.
I'm just thinking that we pay more and tariffs is going to cause an average Ghanaian to lose some kind of money, because an average Ghanaian earning a salary less than 2,000 Ghana cedis, 3,000 can't pay those. Even now, people are finding it very difficult to pay their light bills and water bill. So I'll believe the government, if the government can also do something about it to maintain or not to increase anything, so that, because we are also suffering. The e-levy just came and we are suffering because we pay e-levy day in and day out, on every transaction that you make, 100 cedis and above, and it's affecting an average Ghanaian. So if government brings this up, it's going to cost a lot. It's going to cost.
Say the proposal be about say increase utility tariffs in Manama. Even our demands nankasa is very high. Now already on minimum wage in that. And he say bibi fufro wa ombeya increase yen you can say utilities ana bibia ebebo omajuma na abani yen fa ho ba say osan the bed ni be kan yen etimamufo no ho a eyo how this year transport fares akọ high yen salary dey tia na ti ye brepa nti ye pa mocho
So he is basically saying that things are hard for the ordinary Ghanaian, and therefore, if there is any other alternative for the companies to raise revenue, they should, than burdening the ordinary Ghanaian with increment in tariffs.
You heard Samuel Brace speaking with some members of the public who are expressing how they will be affected by the increase in tariffs. Let's talk about other issues, because the threat of terrorism is increasingly descending from the Sahel towards coastal countries, as more than 53% of all ECOWAS regions are experiencing insurgencies. The fear of a pervasive spillover phenomenon making Ghana's border regions vulnerable to attacks is high. That's according to a report by the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism released a couple of days ago. The report further indicates that Ghana has a prolonged unresolved conflict, and the current inherently high exploitative capacity of extremists implies that these vulnerabilities put Ghana in danger. The West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism in its report is thus urging the government of Ghana to intensify security measures to avert any attack. Executive Director at the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism, Mumuni Mukhtar, joins us via phone to highlight the latest security situation in the sub-region. I'm grateful for your time, Mr. Mukhtar. What are the critical security challenges you have observed at the country's borders in relation to insurgent activities? Hello, Mr. Mukhtar. Do we have Mr. Mukhtar on the line?
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Mukhtar, you are live on News Desk on the JoyNews channel. I'm grateful for your time. I'm asking what the critical security challenges are, those that you've observed at the country's borders in relation to insurgent activities.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good afternoon or good morning to your listeners. So this is you're looking at. It's a report that assesses Ghana's vulnerability to violent extremism, looking at it from both internal and external sources. And your question relates to the internal sources of insecurity or factors that could motivate individuals to become vulnerable or could be exploited by extremist groups. And we make mention of several factors. We are looking at the unresolved chieftaincy and ethnic conflicts that are dotted across the country, especially the good number of them in the northern part of the country. We have over 353 unresolved chieftaincy and ethnic conflicts in this country. And the fact that many of them are located in the north, closer to some of the border countries that are currently experiencing attacks. These are vulnerabilities that could be exploited by extremist groups. And in this same report, we make mention of a report by the Global Terrorism Index for 2020 and 2021 that reveals that over 97% of all terrorism fatalities occurred in countries that are currently experiencing conflict. It tells you the exploitative capacity of extremists to take advantage of existing conflict. And that's why we feature this and highlight the significance or importance of ensuring that we do all we can to resolve all these conflicts, especially if you look at Boko, the proximity of Boko to the theater of violence in the region. This is a place we have to pay attention to and invest all we can to quickly resolve that. We are looking at issues of youth unemployment. The pervasive youth unemployment in the country, it's a vulnerability that could be exploited. Elsewhere, within the Lake Chad Basin area and some of the Sahelian countries, extremist groups seem to have understood the youth far better than even the state. They give you $200 or $250 with a gun or a small loan and get you on board, and you become loyal to these groups. They provide social services to local communities and places where government's presence is very, very limited. And we have similar areas or similar spots in many parts of the northeastern part of the country. And so these things are issues that could be exploited by extremist groups. We are currently dealing with issues of marginalization along ethnic lines in several parts of the border community. Issues to do with smuggling, syndicates along the borders, and crime among young people. This collectively make us more vulnerable to extremism. In addition to the several other factors we have cited in the report, including the Western Togoland separatist, campaigners, as well as the Fix the Country campaigners who are looking, mounting a very spirited campaign to exploit grievances of the local population.
Mr. Mukhtar, and I'm happy that you spoke about how these countries surrounding Ghana are, posing threats to us and the need for government to act. But what exactly should government be doing to avert any possible terrorist attack?
So we start by looking at the situation of Ghana within the sub-region. We made it clear that the threat of violent extremism has been moving from the Sahelian states towards coastal states, and that includes Ghana. And today, as we speak, not only is Burkina Faso thinking low, we have the northern borders of Benin, Togo, northern borders of Cote d'Ivoire, as well as the eastern border with Burkina Faso that are experiencing a spillover effect. The spillover phenomenon has affected all these countries, and today we have over 53 countries of the West African states currently suffering terrorism. What we need to be looking at is to focus on the border regions of this country in terms of how we can deal with the vulnerabilities, we can ensure deterrence, we can build resilience within the local population against the threats. Of course, already government has done a lot of programs. Some of them include joint border patrol exercises. We have a national framework for countering and preventing violent extremism. What we need for that report to do, we need speed to involve the local communities and civil society. We have done quite poorly in terms of how we can galvanize the support of the civil society and local community actors to ensure that we collectively work to build resilience against the threat, sharing information and collaborating with the local security agencies to ensure that this does not happen here. And this point is so important because the way we deal with terrorism in West Africa has largely been through combat measures. We have over-securitized our approach to dealing with it. In fact, that's why you would see MINUSMA, that's why you see the AFRICOM, that's why you see the GFR and several other security programs. And they have been counterproductive. And our governments have fallen for it. They have looked at the problem as though it's exclusively a problem that should be dealt exclusively by the state. But experience has shown that we need a big role of civil society because the battle against the threat cannot be won only on the battlefield. It has to be won together with the local community to help them build resilience against it. And Ghana is still in a very good place to derive or devise preventive measures against the threat.
Mukhtar Mukhtar is the executive director of the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. I'm grateful for your time. We can now speak with international security analyst Dr. Vladimir Nji Danso to get his views on the developing story. Mr. Nji Danso, I'm grateful for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Now, the issue of terrorism is reportedly spreading at an alarming rate in the sub-region. How dangerous is this situation?
Well, terrorism everywhere is dangerous. And the spread is also real. If you take the whole of Africa, 70% of all terrorist activities in Africa is in West Africa, and that's scary enough. They're concentrated in the Sahel zone. But if you look at the spread, it's spreading downwards. And it's clear why it's spreading downwards that way. And that's why we should also be very careful about our state and ensure that terrorism has no foothold in the country. So it's scary, it's real.
From what you know and from intelligence that your outfit is picking, how close is this to us?
Very close. But the last time the terrorists struck, they were about some few kilometers away from the border with Burkina Faso. But 3 strikes, one was about 17 kilometers away, the other was about 6, 7, and the latest one was, I think, very close, barely about 5 kilometers. And that shows that, I mean, we should be very careful and we should build some resilience against the downward spread of terrorism.
What could be accounting for this? I mean, what is the attraction?
Well, The attraction to terrorism has several causes, structural causes and motivational causes. Structural, when the country has porous borders, when the country has ungoverned spaces, big ungoverned spaces, where government is not felt in those places and people use the vacuum to endear themselves to the population, and then they give them the motivation through religion or ideology. And these are the receptive points where you can get terrorism ready. And especially when you have known terrorist organizations putting themselves in, like the Sahel area, Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, ISWAP, and all those, Jinim and others, they were just close by. So when the structural elements lend themselves to their presence, then they will spread. But having said that, it doesn't mean when you have these structural elements, then obviously terrorism comes. The report of the West African counterterrorism, whatever, I read, the conclusions do not seem to support the premises. Yes, we are vulnerable. We have all those structural elements around. Unemployment, poverty, destitution, we have all of them around. That doesn't mean they translate automatically into terrorism. No. There must be those receptacles. That is, there must be some organizations which are prevalent and which can fit into the vacuum before terrorism can thrive. There must be that ideological or religious motivation. And in this country, we are not yet there, where there is an ideological or religious motivation to accept terrorism as a base for a systemic jolt.
Dr. Nchudan, so we definitely must do something about this, especially as you say it's very close to us. What do you recommend, as a solution or as a prevention for this insurgency?
Sure, we must be doing something. Every country in the world is vulnerable to terrorism. There's not a single country in this world which will say, I'm immune from terrorism. If you look at what happened on 9/11 and what happened in Belgium and then Charlie Hebdo and others, then you know that terrorism can come from any quarter. And therefore, what we do, we have the preventive measures. First and foremost, are we making sure that we have human security? Those elements that give the structural reasons for terrorism, unemployment, those kinds of things. Are we doing anything to ensure that the youth have something to do and not just conglomerating to discuss issues of ideology and religion? That's the first thing. Two, we must, I always call mainstream terrorism. You and I know very little about terrorism. Very, very little. We are unaware of anything at all. We are not security conscious. Your outfit did a program at the Accra Mall, and you yourself, you are witness to the outcome. So that we are completely oblivious to those little things that can create insecurity. The third is, people think that terrorism has a flag, and when you see the flag, then you attack it. Terrorism, other than that, Nigeria would have been able to, defeat Boko Haram. They are only 3,500. And how many years now? Nigeria has an army of over 150,000, I believe. And yet, they have not been able to defeat them. So terrorism is diffused and cellular. You can't just track them. It's not a conventional warfare where you say you just go and pile pressure on them. So again, we must rather have the minds and the eyes of people on our side. That's why I'm calling for mainstreaming terrorism. Do we have programs that create the awareness about terrorism in this country? It's very, very important. The media, everybody, civil society organizations, and the government must be in arms against terrorism through awareness creation. Issues about terrorism must be known to people. So when they see one, they know one, and that kind of thing, and not to support it. These are some of the things we can be doing. Again, of course, the kinetic approach is very, very important. Forward presence of our security agencies. And I think government is doing very well on that. We have FOBs all around the northern area, that is forward operating battalions. Their forward presence alone is scary enough to alarm anybody who would want to enter that way. But let me finally say that I do not think we are not taking any measures. We are. But the most important thing on all this is that the terrorists would not stupidly just enter Ghana, knowing very well that they can be routed. They will never enter any country where they think the country is dangerous to enter. They need Ghana. They are recruiting from Ghana, number one. They need Ghana as a haven where they can rush in and hide and go back. So I do not think they will attack the way they are attacking Burkina Faso or Mali. They will not attack that way. That is why we should be careful to eliminate all things that will allow them to enter and settle.
I'm grateful for your time. Dr. Vladimir Nchedanso is international relations and security expert. We can now go live to Parliament and speak to James Agalga. He is Parliament's Defense and Interior Committee ranking member. I'm grateful for your time, Mr. Agalga. Are you surprised about the reported change in the trend of activities of these insurgent groups from neighboring countries?
No, Asha, I am not surprised at all. First of all, the report you are looking at is nothing new. If you look at our own national security strategy, I think most of the concerns raised in that report have in one way or the other found expression in our own national security strategy. I mean, I think you heard Dr. Vladimir Nchedanso speak at length about some of the measures our own country has taken to prevent any terrorist activity from occurring on our soil. But as for me, the most frightening development that we need to watch carefully is youth unemployment, because he, in his submission, talked about the desire of terrorist groups to recruit from our country, and they have indeed been recruited. I mean, you recall several Ghanaians have actually gone to fight and die in Syria. We've seen videos of some of them operating in the Mali region, Ghanaian youth. And you need to ask yourself, why have these Ghanaians traveled all the way to areas where terrorism is thriving to fight shoulder to shoulder with terrorists? And when they are done fighting over there, what are they going to do? They are simply going to come back home. And when they come back home, they might try to activate terrorist cells, which we are told are in existence in our country. There are sleeper cells in our country. You can't run away from that. So, point is, what is the level of commitment? Yes, some measures are being taken, but the level of commitment is something that we should all be talking about. I mean, as a country, are we willing to invest a lot more resources, to actually put into operation some of the strategies we have outlined ourselves in our national security strategy? We have a framework that is supposed to deal with violent extremism and counter-terrorism in our country. What is our approach towards funding the clear strategies that have been captured in those important documents? And that is where I have had a challenge. It does appear, and I know there are competing demands. We need to build roads, we need to fix schools, etc. But that fails into human security. I mean, and Dr. Vladimir Nchedanso clearly stated that if we invest heavily in human security, in a way, we would be preventing the occurrence of terrorism in our country. So we have the strategy, we know about the dangers, we have ruled out forward operating bases, but the point is that enough to deter terrorist activity in our country? I don't necessarily think so. Terrorism can be, homegrown. And how do we grow terrorists locally? When life becomes hopeless, somebody completes the university and simply cannot find what to do. Yesterday, I read on social media how a graduate from the University of Science and Technology has resorted to selling ice water, in our streets, just to eke out some living for himself, Asha. These are the things we need to watch critically as a country. But all said and done, I think that those who came out with that report have done well. government needs to take the report very seriously and add some more, zest and zeal to our strategies. I mean, the implementation of the strategies that we have all been talking about, which are in our own national security strategy. I wasn't too happy. I mean, when we debated the budget statement, I made it very clear that there were no budget lines for the implementation of our own national security strategy. And that has always been a challenge for us as a country. We have brilliant ideas, but when it comes to implementation, we are found wanting, Asha.
I'm grateful for your time. James Agalga is a ranking member on the Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament. We'll take a break on JoyNews Desk. When we return, we'll bring you the very latest from the world of business.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to business. My name is Darryl Kwao. Government is here to fully settle electricity subsidies granted as COVID-19 relief to the Electricity Company of Ghana. That's according to a report by the power distribution firm submitted to the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission for consideration to increase electricity tariffs. Charles Nexinebua has more.
ECG, however, expects the government to continue to honor its debt obligations to keep the company afloat. It therefore expressed worry that subsidies expected to be paid by the government on behalf of customers are always in arrears, thereby negatively affecting the financial health of the company. Government indebtedness to ECG in the last few years had gone down to a little above 3 billion cedis. The components of government bills are ministries, departments and agencies, Ghana Water Company Limited, subsidies, street light shortfall, and utility relief granted to all customers from July 2016 to June 2019 and COVID-19 relief. However, between 2019 and 2021, government has paid ECG almost 17 billion cedis as its indebtedness. The various government payments, the report said, were reconciled with stakeholders in the electricity value chain and applied to reduce government indebtedness. Importantly, the total amount paid by government under this arrangement was more than government's indebtedness.
Well, and as the Electricity Company of Ghana is demanding a 148% increment in tariffs, Executive Director of ASEP, Ben Boakye, says any further subsidy could crumble Ghana's already fragile economy.
Obviously, energy prices is going to go up. Every segment of the value chain in energy has to go up. And to the extent that, street lights consume power, that tariff cannot stay the same. But to what extent? I think on Wednesday, there will be a discussion where we would have to interrogate the numbers that ECG will present. And they will have to show clearly how they will reduce the waste and inefficiencies for us to continue to pay the tariff that they always want to push on the consumer. If you do not reduce the inefficiencies, the tendency is that people will still have room to steal power. So what you're going to do is to pile the burden on the few honest, legitimate customers that you do have. And many people, many businesses still continue to steal power and not pay for it. So those are significant questions that we want ECG to address when we meet PURC and the stakeholders on Wednesday.
And that's all for business for now. My name is Darryl Kwao. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to News Desk. We are now going live to cover the NCCE dialogue on 3 decades of uninterrupted constitutional rule, revisiting the agenda for reforms. Let's take you live there to the dialogue. It's happening here in Accra.
Our national life is in itself very laudable. These discussions, apart from engendering higher commitment to the principles of our constitution, and compelling strict observance of them by persons who are entrusted with statutory authority, they also point out areas of the Constitution that do not appear to be working smoothly and need modification. It is in this sense that the NCCE deserves utmost commendation for organizing this high-level national conversation, which should serve to direct the discussions about constitutional reform towards achieving some concrete goals. It has been stated with authority by the Supreme Court of Ghana that the recent constitution ought to be seen as a living organism which is capable of growth and development. See to 4 verses Attorney General, 1980 Ghana Law Report, 637. Therefore, it is normal that with the effluxion of time, a constitutional document would need to change to reflect its growth and development. This reality was not lost on the framers of the 1992 Constitution. Consequently, they devoted the whole of Chapter 25 of the Constitution to making comprehensive provisions on processes and procedures for amending both the entrenched and non-entrenched provisions of the Constitution. Nonetheless, as the Constitution is the supreme law that lies at the top of the normative pyramid of our legal system, it must not be subject to frequent and trifling amendments, lest its sanctity withers away. As was explained in 4 verses Attorney General, the Constitution is a solemn legal document, political and developmental in nature. It is designed to reflect past values, regulate the present, and inspire the future of the nation. It provides for the longings and aspirations of the people for the realization of a better and fuller life, while making provision for a framework of governance necessary to achieve these objectives. However, society is not static, and what the aspirations of our nations were considered to be in 1992 may change with time. While we as a people are occupied with the uninterrupted application of the Constitution, some of our collective values disintegrate and are replaced by new ones. Some political priorities get overtaken by others, and some previously perceived urgent challenges cease to cause the anxiety that they created in 1992. In that direction, the Constitution must be reasonably stable enough to readjust to new realities of changing values and national priorities. It is an established democratic principle that judges, through the power of judicial interpretation, are permitted to interpret and apply a written constitution, such as ours, in a manner that reflects and gives effect to changing priorities, values, and national focus. However, the scope of judicial interpretation as a means for accommodating deserving changes to a constitution is highly restricted in matters where a particular policy choice has been expressly stated in the language of the text of the Constitution. In the Supreme Court case of Republic versus Fast Track High Court, ex parte Daniels, 2003-2004 Supreme Court of Ghana Law Report, JSC said as follows, quote, "We cannot, under the cloak of constitutional interpretation, rewrite the Constitution of Ghana. Even in the area of statutory interpretation, we cannot amend a piece of legislation because we dislike its terms or because we suppose that the lawgiver was mistaken or unwise. Our responsibility is greater when we interpret the Constitution. We cannot and must not substitute our wisdom for the collective wisdom of the framers of the Constitutional Code." The other limitation of constitutional amendment by judicial interpretation is that what judges may perceive as a new drift of national consensus may be disputed. Certain times, when the Supreme Court renders a decision that appears to dictate a particular policy choice, said to be the intention of the framers of the Constitution, some vociferous sections of the society would challenge it and insist that the opposite of what the court said is a better policy choice for the country. To this end, I believe that while judicial interpretation may have a role in aligning our Constitution in penumbral areas left out of the constitutional text, Since a constitution cannot set out every conceivable circumstance and provide for it, after 30 years of existence, our constitution requires certain significant reforms that can only be accomplished by resort to the amendment procedure in Chapter 25 of the Constitution. Gladly, the work of the Constitution Review Commission in 2010 resulted in the comprehensive report. While I do not intend to go through the findings and recommendations of the CRC, for they are well documented, it bears pointing out at least 3 key points of dissatisfaction Ghanaians expressed about the workings of the 1992 Constitution at the time of the consultations. These were: 1, deficit in transparent governance despite changing from dictatorship to constitutional rule in 1992. 2, continuous high levels of public sector corruption and lack of accountability for revenue from natural resource exploitation. 3, non-realization of real democratic dividends in the form of accelerated national development promised as attainable under constitutional rule. These were 3 key areas that Ghanaians said the Constitution had not lived up to what they expected. I will discuss the work of the CRC later on, but let me make the point here that since those conversations, Ghanaians continue to register their grievances with the governance under the 1992 Constitution and to call for amendments. The calls for constitutional reforms are getting louder of late and have spread to involve the younger generation whose persistent failure to see a better future ahead of them after continuous changes of government appear to explain their awakening. It has dawned on many observers that as a nation we require something deeper than changing governments under the same constitution, and that we need to take a hard look at the governance framework under our constitution. For example, earlier this year, the immediate past chapters of the NCCE, Mrs. Josephine Nkrumah, in a press release on Constitution Day, acknowledged that despite the remarkable achievements of the Constitution, there is a need for a reform and improvement of the constitutional infrastructure. And I quote here,